Hey,
Hello.
I'm like super tired.
Why? Why are you so tired?
We're watching my nephew, and it's just a lot of work.
To watch him? I mean, doesn't the kid do most of the work in terms of running around in circles and
No, he
whatever?
really wants to play with you is the thing. He wants to play with you the entire time. And he's super cute. So here, let me back up. I'd like to start with an apology to you.
Well, that's okay. I forgive you, but I don't know what for.
So when we were little, I would constantly want to play imagination games with you.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how exhausting that is until now.
Someone's always like, let's do this thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
I've played restaurant, I've played doctor, I've played house, we played racing, we played fireball versus snowballs, which is just pretending to throw stuff at each other.
That's pretty cool.
It was a lot. I'm so tired. And it's
hilarious.
been one day.
Well, that's really long-term karma coming, chicken coming home to roost sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun, but it's also just a lot.
That's like 10 times what Abby and I were going through when we cat sat this little kitten.
That cat was so cute.
Because it was crazy. It would run around and always play and yell a lot. And he was, a fool.
He was so cute, though.
But he was so cute. And he was pretty small. And whenever you went to bed, you could just like put him in a room and deal with him in the
you
morning.
could just ignore him. It's fine.
Yeah. So you can't really do that acceptably with children.
No, you can't. Well, the worst part was we had Copper over there too. And so we're just like, Copper gets very freaked out by loud noises. Mm-hmm. So anytime like the kid would yell or like laugh or something, Copper would like want to nip at him, which is just not good.
Yeah.
So he only got him once and it was very small. So like, he's fine. But he learned quickly. Like, I just was like, okay, when we're on the dog, we have to like use our quiet voices, and it was fine.
Copper has to work on that in the future.
He's high strung.
Yeah. Gotta learn to let things go.
I know. He got better as the day went on. I think he got used to it.
Yeah. It's just like, this little thing is annoying. I guess I'll just have to deal with that.
This thing's gonna be annoying and loud. That's weird for me. Usually my parents just sit around all day.
Yeah, change of pace.
Yeah, right.
That's difficult to deal with.
Yeah. We're watching him all week. And Kyle's like out grocery shopping, so it's just like me and this kid and just entertaining him.
Nice. I mean, get yourself some coffee or something caffeinated.
Yeah, I mean, I have a Coke here, so I'll be okay.
There
I'm
you
ready.
go.
I'm ready to learn. Clink,
I'm
clink,
drinking
clink.
tea.
Ooh,
Yeah.
What kind of tea?
Moroccan mint.
I love Moroccan mint.
It's like green tea, but like, flavored, I guess, to be.
Yeah. Does it have green tea and mint too, I guess? Like both?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Like peppermint and some other stuff. I don't know.
Hell yeah, that sounds great.
All right. Yeah. You said you're ready to learn?
I'm ready to learn. I've got my caffeine and I'm ready.
All right.
I'm ready for some adult conversation.
Yeah. We're going to have an interactive lecture here. We're going to both be kind of a discussion,
Okay.
It's just, it's going to be a class discussion kind of thing where it's not going to be so much like, hey, Christine, did you know this?
Okay.
We're going to pick it apart ourselves. And what are we talking about today? What do you want to learn about?
All right, so last week we talked about the myths of the USSR. Not all of them, but just kind of some of the more common ones.
Yeah.
So this time I want to turn those tables and talk about the myths of capitalism.
Ooh, yeah. That's a good one. We similarly, we're only going to be talking about some of them because there are many. Mm-hmm. But yeah, let's get into that. I like that approach. I think with this one, there's not going to be as many of them where we have to like shrug our shoulders and say, yeah, that one's true. I don't think for the most part, at least the ones we picked, we're going to end up with many that are, oh shucks, capitalism does, It is great, actually.
Actually, yeah. By the end of this, we're gonna go start a business or something.
We just end the podcast and become hedge fund managers, like.
Yeah, I thought that was the goal of this podcast. Actually, do I need to leave?
Yeah, get out.
Ah, shit. Okay.
All right, let's start with the first one that we have on our list.
Yeah, so this is one you hear a lot what I like to call smooth brains, is that capitalism is the most efficient system.
What is meant by that, I think, is capitalism like allocates resources efficiently is what, it would boil down to, right? Like capitalism does a good job of making like the free market does a good job of making sure there are enough workers in all the industries because it just all runs off of supply and demand, right? So like,
yeah. So I almost sent you this thing I saw last night on Twitter. Someone had taken a picture of their like fruit cup. It was like a cup of pears and juice or whatever. And it said on it, grown in Peru, packed in Thailand. And this person was from the States. And so they just like had a map and they just like drew out that crazy triangle.
Yeah.
And they just tweeted it with capitalism is the most efficient system.
Well, it's okay. So the counter argument to that would be it is the most efficient system because look how much cheaper transportation is.
Yeah, that was a lot of the replies. Was like, oh, this is how it works. Like shipping is super cheap and like not everyone can grow that and blah, blah, blah.
And so I guess, if that's your argument that it costs less to the capitalist to do that, okay, you win. And it costs less to the consumer too. I'll give you that. You win on that.
That's another
So
point,
maybe we are going to sometimes shrug our shoulders about things. But
yes.
I would argue that there are like a lot of other costs involved to that the consumer doesn't pay, the capitalist doesn't pay, that nevertheless get put on the backs of people. First of all, the people growing the crops, the reason they're growing them there, and aside from climate issues, is labor issues. You can grow fruits and stuff in other places, but they pick certain areas to kind of prey upon people who have lower labor standards.
Yeah, I mean, most of our produce comes from other countries, and like we can grow food, but it's cheaper there because they don't pay their workers as much there. There's less strict labor laws. Like it's just, it's more exploitative. I would say another cost that isn't talked about enough is the environmental cost. That's a lot of pollution to pack up a freighter and drive it across the ocean twice.
For real. A lot of expended fuel doing that. I mean, not per container maybe because there's so many things on it, but still there's so much freight that's shipped across the oceans that way.
Yeah.
It's the same way with like Amazon shipping and stuff. It's, it comes from all over the place. It's super fast for you. It's super cheap because of the scale that they're doing. But what is that environmental impact of all of those packages, all of the, the plastic and everything?
And the human impact. Like you hear stories all the time about how shitty it is to be an Amazon worker. Like you have to meet your quotas and you run around and you can't fucking go to the bathroom. Like it's horrible.
They got pain pills in the vending machines,
Ugh. So yeah, I mean, that's a thing. And I really hate that the response to that is like, well, do you want to pay more for it? I'm like, yeah, if that means that people get paid fairly, then yeah, I'm willing to do that. And like, you have to give up some convenience so that people are treated ethically. Like that's just the thing at the end of the day, I think.
I think so. And I think to make a kind of a more popular appeal, because it's not very popular to tell people, hey, we want to pay more for things.
It's not.
Socialists, on the other hand, do want people to pay a lot less for other things, like rent, like healthcare. These things are, you're not going to be paying as much for them. So you will have plenty of extra money to toss around for better products that don't cause as much suffering to people or to the earth.
Yeah, it's definitely a trade-off. And I think you mentioned it earlier, the idea of it's the most efficient. I think in capitalist terms, efficiency means cheaper, but like it doesn't necessarily mean better or like more. It definitely doesn't mean more ethical.
Yeah, it means, well, ultimately it boils down to it meaning better for the bourgeoisie, the capitalist. Because the only reason they care about the consumer prices is because that gets you to buy it and then that gives them the profit.
Yeah.
They don't really care about making it cheap for you. And how do you know? Because whenever it comes down to, hey, some state passed a labor law and now we have to pay people more money, who's taking it? Who's paying the higher price? That's going to be, and they'll tell you out front, that's going to be the consumers. We're pushing that onto them.
Yeah.
Because we're going to make our end no matter what.
Yeah. There's no way they're going to take a look at their budget and see what they're doing wrong. Nope.
Yeah. No, those yachts and those mansions don't pay for themselves. So I think, that we kind of clearly, and maybe there's some more rebuttals to that we haven't thought of, but it does seem, this is kind of our perspective of why we would say capitalism is not that efficient, in terms of consumer goods. I definitely don't think it's very efficient in terms of other other things that we would consider, that socialists especially and communists would like to see socially administered, like healthcare.
Oh God, our healthcare system is so inefficient. It's a nightmare to navigate. Like if anyone's tried to like work on an insurance claim, it's just a nightmare.
Yeah. Navigating your plan, like every year when they're like, hey, your plan, here it is. Here are the ways that we're going to try to tell you it got better when it really got worse, you know?
It took me, I was trying to get an appointment online, like through ZocDoc, and it took me like 30 minutes to figure out what my plan is called because it had some bullshit like name of my company or whatever plan. I'm like, no, just, I need to know. Is it like POS? Is it HO?
Yeah.
Like what is, I also don't know what those things mean.
Mm-hmm,
Like,
all the acronyms, all the like letter designations too. Like they'll be like HD Active Care 1 or something. It's dumb. That's dumb.
it's needlessly confusing. I feel like they make it confusing just to cheat people out of money.
Yeah, because ultimately they don't want to cover you. That's like
Nope.
they make money from getting money from you without having to pay you. So
Ugh, it's crazy.
housing, I don't think people can argue that a nation that has, millions of vacant units while it also has millions of homeless or, hundreds of thousands of homeless people or housing insecure people. How's that efficient? That's efficient for somebody, but it's not efficient for the people.
Yeah, it's efficient in terms of making money, but it's not efficient in serving everyone who needs those goods.
Yeah, and I guess that's related to our critique of consumer goods too, is that it is efficient in terms of making profit, but it's not efficient in terms of the earth or, human welfare. It's similar to what we're saying with all of these is, it's definitely efficient at doing a thing, and the people making that argument benefit from that,
Yeah.
or don't realize it.
So we're reading Open Veins of Latin America.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to get a little spoilery here.
It's okay.
For next week or whenever we get to that.
I was just reading some today too.
It's very good. So one of the main theses, is that how you pluralize that?
It is.
I don't like it. One of the main theses is that in Latin America, they produce so much of our goods. Well, they don't produce, they produce the raw materials for it. And it basically sets those countries up to be dependent on other countries to then take those goods and like make them through manufacturing into goods they can sell back to them. So an example of this is like the cotton industry. Mexico grows a ton of cotton. A lot of places in Latin America do. And in like during colonial times in, I think this was Argentina, they would ship out the raw material, and then they literally weren't allowed to have looms, and they would just shut down all their industrial practices so that they could sell it back to them, so the British could sell it back to them at a premium. And it's insane. They're literally just forcing, in a lot of this came on the backs of quote unquote independence. So they basically just said, okay, you don't belong to the Spanish anymore. You belong to us because like we sell you everything. So like it's just so fucked. Basically just forcing them into being completely dependent on them for goods.
I guess that would be considered like an early form of capitalism, mercantilism is, but still it's like what Marx called the primitive accumulation of capital, the time when the nations were going around invading everywhere and taking shit, and that fueled the rise of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
All that raw material, all that capital getting brutally extracted.
In the worst ways imaginable. We will talk about that too.
Yeah.
It is nasty.
So again, like I think the point there is super efficient and good and beneficial to a certain group.
I think that's the thing. Yeah, you have to decide what you value more. And, we're going to get to these in some of our other myths, but it's like, do you value someone making tons of money more than you do everyone being like alive and treated humanely?
Yeah. And it gets more complicated because we can see it pretty plainly, like within a country, and we can say like, yeah, those guys are, they're robbing us and making it for their own good. But on the other hand, globally, America's at the top of a heap of countries that we kick down toward. We exploit the other countries in the world so that we can have all the cheap goods. And
Absolutely. Like who makes all of our clothing and our electronics and most of our cars? Like, yeah. And it's because we keep those prices low for our own benefit. I don't know if you actually, I don't know, so the post office is going through trouble right now, but like that provides a really important service to people. And if you take that away, you only have shipping, and like shipping is expensive. We think it's not expensive because like Amazon has now spoiled us with free 2-day shipping, but like actually no, shipping is expensive.
Another criticism, I would say, capitalism can be, our argument here is that it's efficient for some people and harmful towards a lot of other people. I would say that, however, it's basically not any good at dealing with crises.
Yeah.
We're seeing it
real time.
Yeah. Anytime there's a little bit of, because the thing is, right, if you're not maximizing your profit, if you're like a capitalist enterprise or whatever, and you're not maximizing your profit, you're getting run out. You're losing, you're getting bankrupted. Someone else is taking over. Someone more ruthless than you who will take more risks than you. They're coming in. So the whole system is built as riskily as possible, kind of on purpose, because that's the only way you survive. If something bad happens to a system that's as riskily built as possible, it can't stand up to that. There's minimal amounts of planning and resources put into dealing with crisis because that's not really profitable to do.
Yeah, because a crisis is something you have to really plan for and really take your time and have backup plans and all this stuff. And it's like not a profitable game unless you literally gamble on it, which that's what insurance is.
Yeah, that's true. But don't insurance companies don't they take as much risk as possible with that and try to assume like the best case?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's why they want to gather so much data so they can tell like, okay, what is the likelihood of this person actually, getting into an accident or having health insurance problems or whatever it is. That's why you have to do things like take a wellness exam for your health insurance because they want to know how much should they cover for you, which is, I always get fucked up because I'm fat and depressed. So
yeah, no, it's,
great.
It's just discrimination, but they're going to try to not call it that,
Yeah, I know. And they'll always spin it and be like, we provide, discounts if you're healthy. I'm like, that's a tax on unhealthy people.
Yeah, that means, yep.
And being healthy is not just a fucking choice. Like sometimes you're born with shit. Like, oh my God, it's upsetting.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, if you're poor, you're more likely to have health problems. So anyway, crises. Yeah, they're bad at it. Can you give, I would ask a stupid question. It's that time.
That's okay.
So is this what happened in the housing crisis? What happened in the housing crisis?
Yes. Oh, this is 100% what happened in the housing crisis.
I watched the Big Short and I still didn't understand it.
Okay, so I thought it explained it pretty well. So I'll try to break it down because I guess at that one, the data dump section, they kind of plop it all down in a cool but it's...
Well, the problem is they did it while a hot lady was in a bubble bath. And I'm like, well, I'm looking at this hot lady. I'm not listening to her explain.
I multitasked.
Good for you.
What happens is that the subprime mortgage crisis, they started issuing more, the banks started issuing more mortgages to people with like lower credit and stuff. Mm-hmm. People who are kind of riskier to lend it to. And both sides will tell you, like the liberals will say, oh, this was the greedy banks. Conservatives will say this was, liberal social engineers trying to get poor people into homes. Uh-huh. Whatever. The banks made sure that they played it to where they could get money in the end. So they made all these loans to people even when they thought that the people could not pay them. Then they bundled them up into, and this part nobody can really ever understand because unless you're like a banker or whatever.
A wizard.
They bundled them up into something called mortgage-backed security.
Okay.
Which is just like a financial thing that you can buy. And think of it like a piece of paper with a list of mortgages on it. Okay.
Okay.
You could buy and sell this, and whoever holds it like gets to collect the money on that. But also, they're left holding the bag if nobody pays the money.
It's like Monopoly.
Yeah.
You owned all the blue. Your subprime mortgages are the individual properties, and then you just took them all and put them in your blue zone.
Okay.
This is a bad analogy.
I don't
think it
really holds up, but.
That's fine.
So what they would do is they would sell those, right? They also got what are called the bond rating agencies. These are financial, smart guys They come in and they look at your list of properties and they say, oh, those are really good. You know, like people are definitely going to pay those back. AAA rating. Good. Solid gold. Or those are all shady. They're all going to collapse. Junk bond, you know, whatever.
Okay.
They got these guys to rate these things as top notch, top flight, great things.
Even though they were made up of a bunch of shitty loans?
Yeah, because they would package them up with like some properties that were like okay.
Oh my
And
gosh.
they would just kind of hide it in there, even though
All
most
right.
of it was made of crap. So
Okay.
then they would turn around and sell those, and whatever, you know, flood. To most of it was that, till so much of it was subprime mortgages, and then whenever the housing bubble burst, which all the bubbles eventually do, it starts a panic as people stop paying those loans back. The companies that own them start trying to collect on more and more of it because they're panicking because some of their stuff's falling through. The prices drop out of everything and boom, crisis.
How does a bubble burst?
It's pretty much panic. The stupid thing about money and markets is that they're really based on people's expectations and shit.
Okay. So basically, everyone was buying houses, and then after a while, people were like, what if no one can pay for the houses? And then everyone freaked out?
Well, yeah. So a lot of people were buying houses not to live in, but to turn around and sell for more money.
Oh, they're
and their
flipping.
thinking was, it will be worth more money. Like I will buy it. I might sell it the next week. I might sell it the next year, but it'll be worth more money.
Yeah.
It's just an investment vehicle. And so once that stops, it's like stocks. You know, people buy stocks and they think it's going to go up because that's what stocks do, right?
Yeah.
But at some point, people start worrying. Wait. What if it's gonna? What if the price is gonna drop? It's all people's expectation. And when enough people start doing that, boom.
It only drops because people think it's going to drop. That's insane.
It's not only. I mean, I shouldn't say that. There are possible other causes that could happen. Let's say prices would go way up if we had like a series of firestorms through the Northwest that destroyed a big chunk of the housing market. You know, okay,
Yeah.
well, the prices are
there's
going to
fewer
go up or
houses.
something. Yeah.
Okay.
But like with stocks, you know, if oil prices shoot up, okay, there's going to be a stock consequence to that, and that's external. That's a real thing.
Yeah. But a lot of it is like speculative.
But yeah, so much of it is
It's
just,
insane.
and you get that if you follow just headlines and stuff, they'll be like, stock market soars amid hopes of something, and then the next day it'll be like, stock markets plunge amid fears of blah.
It's just so arbitrary.
Yeah, you just pick something bad that's going on in the news and say that's why the stock market's plunging,
Jeez.
and vice versa. It's wild, and that's because the whole thing is a casino.
Yeah, it's just gambling.
Yeah,
I hate it.
capitalism is the most efficient system.
Great.
Everything is a casino.
Yeah. Jeez.
And I guess in the same way, that analogy is actually pretty good because, like, casinos are very efficient for the people running it.
Oh, for sure. House always
And they're
wins.
not very efficient for everyone else. Although you'll have some people who say, hey, no, I make some money going to the boats every once in a while. But for a lot of people, no, they're not a good payout.
Yeah. Ugh.
Next up, people are inherently selfish. Basically, what about human nature?
Yeah. So this is a common one whenever you talk about communism. People are like, well, we can't do that because no one wants to share. No one wants to pay for other people's shit. Even with socialism, they'll do that.
People are greedy. People are lazy. You know, people will try to take advantage. Therefore, we have to have capitalism. Right? What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't know. Honestly, the way I feel about people depends on my mood. I feel like half the time I'm like, no, people are good. Like, they can do good things and we can try to be better. And I feel like I just said half the time, but I feel like more of the time, honestly, I'm like, oh no, people are the worst and I hate them. So I don't know. I want them to be good very badly.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
My question, I guess, would be, do humans even actually have a nature? And that's kind of a weird freshman philosophy sort of question, or like I smoke too much weed question or something. But
Man.
but I mean, okay, maybe humans definitely have certain instincts and stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, so much of what we do is learned behavior.
Yeah, and like in terms of the survival of the fittest thing. Like we've talked about this before, in very early human society, you had to work together or you would all die. So like in many ways, our prehistoric and like Neolithic roots are all community based. And also that stupid show I'm watching Alone, whenever they're alone for that long, you start to go crazy. So you have to have other people.
Yeah, we're social animals, as they say.
We are. And if we're social animals, you'd think you'd have incentive to like be good to other social animals so you can hang out.
Within a certain context, like, so definitely in primitive societies, as you might call them, and before agriculture, when you have hunter-gatherer bands, you're right, everybody has to work together, and there aren't a lot of class distinctions because everybody's working to produce, right?
Yeah.
You do have a lot of community in those old Neolithic societies, but it is also hierarchical because now you have people who don't work for food. So you have kind of masters and slaves, more of a differential there. But
yeah. But I would say, like, evolutionarily, didn't we spend a lot more time being, like, prehistoric than we have being modern humans?
A ton,
quote unquote?
A lot more.
Yeah, so, like, all of our instincts still come from that.
Yes, they do. And they're pretty poor sometimes now because of that. Like, you'll have, fight or flight
we don't know how
instinct.
to, like, use screens.
Yeah, and you deal, a lot of times now, your problems are not immediate and threatening you right now. They're lingering worries, more like,
Yeah.
But your body is tuned to immediate threats. So you might be like in a prolonged, kind of small fight or flight response it's terrible for your health, but a lot of people suffer from this anytime they're stressing from things because that's evolutionarily how we're designed to.
It's called anxiety.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Another thing, I guess, is when we mention the stages of history or historical development or whatever, people in those societies probably said, come on, man, you can't move past like a slave society. That's human nature. Some people are masters, some people are slaves. That's how it is, or like, I don't know, some people are serfs, some people are lords, some people are vassals. Like, this is how it is supposed to be. How did human nature change from those time periods to capitalism? I
mean, people decide they want it better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, I mean, there's a lot of parallels to like the queer community too. Like, there's still people now who are like, no, the woman's gotta do this, the man's gotta do this, and you gotta be with the opposite gender or whatever. It's just, we don't have to. We just don't. Like, move on.
Yeah, it can change. And that is, to me, I think I don't know about that part. I don't know how socially shaped that is. I mean, it probably always was the case that, right? It's just always been the case that people.
So there's been gays a long time.
So.
Yeah, we've been around. There's these dudes. I think I told you about them in like ancient Egypt, and they were literally buried together, and they were marked as like male, but they like used the word for like husband and wife, and like they had carvings together, all kinds of shit. And historians were like, these best friends got buried together. It's crazy.
Confirmed bachelors.
Yeah, exactly. It was ridiculous.
That's good. So not with that, but with back to the idea of kind of human nature being selfish and greedy and everything. If you pull, like, let's say you pull something out of a lake, okay? It can be anything.
Okay.
An old boot.
Wow, we both went for a boot.
You pull an old boot out of the lake. What is it? Definitely.
It's definitely a boot.
Sure, but what adjective would describe it? For sure, no matter what
wet.
It looks like. Yeah, it's wet because you've pulled it out of a lake. All right? Humans, we are living in capitalism, whether we like it or not. Humans are raised in a system from birth that values greed and selfishness, that promotes people to consider themselves individuals and maximizing their efficiency or whatever. We're raised in that, and those are socially the values that are inculcated in future generations. Like, that's what people seem like because that's what they're in.
The ocean we're in.
Yeah. Like, that's, you can't, it's not to say that not everyone's selfish and stuff, but it's something that you have to work with. And then I guess that brings you to the next thing of like, if, like you were saying, so what if that seems like it's human nature? Can't it just be changed?
Yeah. And like, I think you could say the same thing about like working on becoming anti-racist. Like, we live in a very racist society. Same thing with sexist. Like, you are seeped in the patriarchy from the moment you're born. Like, sorry, you are. It sucks, but there's a way out.
Yep.
It helps to have people show you the way out, but there is a way out.
For sure, yeah. Because, yeah, another example would be like just when you, like your instincts and stuff, you're not meant to be driven by that. Like how crazy would the world be if everyone just followed their instincts all the time?
It'd
Like,
be horrible.
people would just be murdering and stuff like, or whatever. Like if you had no self-control or like notion that, hey, I shouldn't do these, do whatever it is that I think at the time, people would just be worse.
Shitting in the
Maybe
street.
not murdering all the time, but still they would be like crazy.
Yeah.
It would be wild.
It'd be pretty rough.
No one should argue that people should just be governed by whatever their innate human nature is. I think
Yeah.
we all try to be better.
Yeah, for sure. Because otherwise you'd be an asshole.
I don't know. Yeah, you shouldn't just settle for like, well, that's how it is.
Yeah, that's just so bleak.
Yeah. A, I don't think it's necessarily how it is. And B, even if it were, change it, dude.
Yeah, and we can do better. Like, it's a real possibility if we actually just fucking work at it. What's next?
Next up, competition is the best thing for progress.
Oh, goody.
Competition, you got to have that, man. You can't have everyone working together. Then why bother getting up in the morning?
So sad.
If you don't have someone to compete against, if you don't have someone to run into the dirt, if you don't have an opponent to beat, what's the point?
My problem with this, my first thought when I look at this thesis is medical research, because it is heavily skewed towards who is funding it. And I mean, we've talked about this before, like that's the reason why like reproductive health is not so great for people with vaginas. Like it's rough out there. Mm-hmm. It's because the people in charge don't care about that. And that's kind of how it is across the board for most medical treatments. The more obscure your disease is, the more marginalized, even though women are not obscure or people with ovaries are not obscure, but still like trans healthcare gets pushed to the side so much, and it's because it's not being funded because people are assholes.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah, it's not, there's competition for, I guess, popular things.
Yeah. Classic example, of course, is toothpaste. You have plenty of choices there. Go there. There's 80 different varieties of toothpaste. Mm-hmm. You look on the back, they all say the same thing in terms of ingredients. There's the cereal aisle, that's,
oh my God,
we got plenty of progress on that front. Competition has done us well there.
Not so great at having a vaccine for COVID. I wonder why.
They're doing trials
Okay.
currently.
But again, I think managing a crisis, it's like if they did have a vaccine for COVID, hopefully it would be either cheap or free. So where's the incentive then to create that vaccine? Because the big pharma, would they be for it?
Well, look, the government's going to buy a lot of it. I mean, many health insurance companies are going to have stated that they'll provide, COVID treatment and stuff.
No, I'll believe that when I see it.
So, I mean, that's good if you've got a health insurance company.
Exactly. A lot of people fucking don't.
Yeah. Tough luck, Mac.
Jesus.
But no, so back to the competition, right? So I don't agree that that's the only reason that people do things like, oh, I got to outcompete. I have to do this better than somebody else. That's the only way we make progress. I don't know. Why would that be the only reason that people try to do anything?
I mean, I feel like my brain has not worked this way since I was like in high school or something. Like I just realized like, oh, two people can be good at things at the same time and it's fine. Like it's actually better when both people are good at things. That means you help each other to get further and bounce ideas off of each other.
That's true. You could collaborate more. We've had many examples of collaboration being in many ways more efficient than, imagine if we had the space race with the Soviets and we were like different private company, like GE was doing something and Boeing was doing something and Ford had something, and you have this horrible like stitched together space shuttle with like ads for Coca-Cola on the side of it and stuff.
Just be a mess.
I mean, that would have exploded. The reason that succeeded as quickly as it did was, sure, maybe you did have these competing firms initially, but they were all brought together in the same contract with NASA and stuff to work on the same thing,
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you think people would then say, well, then you were competing with the Soviet Union to get there first?
Okay, so I'm not like against the concept of competing. Like you can go have a race down the street with somebody like on foot. Okay, that's fine. Compete. But I think what we're saying is that ruthless competition where when someone loses, they lose their livelihood is different from just a competitive spirit. Like I would argue, okay, if everything's nationalized or whatever, and you have like state-run hospitals, why couldn't the hospitals like compete in the sense of like we want to be the hospital with the highest ratings, you know, and the best outcomes and shit. Like you would want to do that, but you wouldn't want them to like compete for resources and shit against each other. That wouldn't, you know, that should be allocated to who needs it.
Yeah, I mean, I would sincerely hope. I mean, like, yeah, not everyone loves their job by far, but I hope that there are some people in the world, and I know there are some people in the world that do their job even though, like, I don't know, like they do it for money for sure, but also because they like it and because they want to do a good job. And
I'm in teaching strictly for the money. Yeah, I got into this thing to be rich.
Oh, you messed up, bud.
Yeah, wish someone would have told me.
It makes me really frustrated when people are like, well, wouldn't you want your, you know, surgeon or whatever to, you know, be highly compensated so that they can do a good job? I'm like, man, I hope my surgeon doesn't want to kill me just because like there's not enough competition and whatever. Like, man,
like they're mid-surgery and like a bell rings. They're like, lunch break. Sorry, Mac, you're dead. You know,
they're not paying me enough to keep you alive.
But yeah, no, I agree. Like that's not the only motivation people have. I do think that there is some, well, especially in our system, you know, the ultimate motivation is I do need to work to survive. But in a world where that's going to be provided, there's still a lot of things people would do because...
Yeah, you can just do things because they provide a service for other people, because you want to take pride in your work. There's lots of reason to do things. Like we talked about this briefly in our art episodes, but I think especially younger artists can get really competitive with other artists about like, you know, who has, you know, more followers or whatever bullshit. I mean, you can both have a lot of followers. Like, just keep going, you know, like it doesn't matter. Like you're making a unique thing, and so are they. So it's fine.
I guess we both agree that competition doesn't have to be there for people to try to achieve things. Competition in the sense of different competing economic entities or whatever. Like you can still have a friendly competition. But
yeah, I mean, I think too, when we've talked about our utopia, there's a lot of science involved. So there's going to be a lot of race for discovery in terms of like, hey, how do we fix the climate crisis? And hey, how do we make a replicator? So I think there'll still be competition in terms of like, hey, let's get really good at science in here, guys. Like, but I don't think it won't be strictly monetary competition, which means we'll have more scientists on it,
I would
and
agree.
They'll be like fairly compensated and stuff.
And really, we're talking about like changing the motivating factor being profit at the end of the day. Besides that, any sort of competition is still like fine, you know, as long as you're not competing to take away earned labor from somebody else. As long as you're not competing, how much can I rob my workers? Then I don't care what you're competing about. That's fine.
Yeah, whatever. That's fine. You can have the most productive factory. Go for it. But productive as in you put out a lot of units and they're very good units, not as in I rip off all my workers the most.
Yeah, that's at the end of the day, I think what we're distinguishing.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is just reframing your definition or being more specific with your definition. Like the same thing with the efficiency thing.
Yeah.
It's like efficient in terms of what?
Yep. Efficient in a way that's good for people. Yeah, that's what we're after.
One day. All right. Hey, man. I hear a lot of capitalists are into freedom. What's up with that?
Capitalists... Wait, sorry. They're not into freedom. I thought come on, you didn't learn it right? Capitalism is freedom.
Wait, what?
Capitalism equals freedom. It's the same thing as freedom. When you say capitalism, you mean freedom, you mean democracy, you mean liberty, good shit, you know? That's what you mean.
I'm making some bad faces right now.
That's why they call it the free market, free enterprise.
And free trade.
Yeah.
I'm reading a lot about free trade and how much it fucks people over.
It's because it's good. It's great.
No, that's not what that means.
All right. So, but you do hear that people saying capitalism is good because it's freedom, because, you know, it guarantees, you know, that's the only free system. The free world, they used to call it. The leader of the free world was, you know, the president, because that was like the non-communists.
So, okay, so why is that? Why is capitalism equals freedom?
Why is that perpetrated? That's perpetrated because it makes it sound good. And there are ways to...
No, I guess what I'm saying, what is their argument for that?
Well, so their
What's the
argument
freedom component?
would be that you are free to do what you want with yourself, to consume what you want, to trade how you want to buy and sell things or consume, to work where you want, to pursue whatever career you want to pursue. All these, that's up to you.
So,
you get to choose.
So none of those things are true.
But that's the argument. Like,
I am not free to consume with what I want because I'd have to be able to afford it. I am not free to pursue whatever career I want because, one, I have to pick a career that is profitable to me, and two, I might have to go to school, which I can't afford. What was the other one?
What else? You're
free to work wherever?
Yeah, free to work wherever you
I
want.
could choose to work at a place that has, maybe it's the best in the biz, but maybe has really shitty insurance, or, maybe I can't afford to move, so I have to work at the place with shitty insurance.
Yeah.
Pretty free so far.
So all those are pretty easily discounted, I guess. Or there are at least exceptions, because I guess I would say that for some people, especially, if you start out life in the right station, for some people, all those things are patently true and obvious to them. They're like, well, duh. I can do whatever I want. World's my oyster.
That's insane. That's insane to me.
But that's how it was for them, so that's why they would see it that way, maybe.
Yeah.
And they would argue that maybe people do have the chance to, have those same opportunities as well. If they just apply themselves or something, I guess, is probably what they would say.
I just don't understand how that fucking basic math works out. So even if you started working as soon as you are legally able to do so, there's no way you could pay for a college education. Like, unless you were working, a drug dealer, basically. Like, I don't know what,
Oh, if you start out.
Like, as in high school, you're working like a part-time job.
And you start out like poor, basically. You start out with zero, and then how are you going to, yeah. For sure.
There's no way.
You have to go into debt, and then you have to do that. And then, they'll say, well, you don't even have to go to college, just do something else. But there, you've already limited the options because you've said that by birth, they can't do this thing because they don't have the money.
Exactly. So, they're literally not free to do that very first thing you said they could do.
Just buy stock in Apple as soon as you exist, and then...
With your $0.
Yeah, with your $0. Use your first paycheck to buy stock in Apple, and then hopefully it goes up.
Hopefully. It's just insane. It's just completely... It's free for some people, is what it is.
And I would say, even with that work example, another point is that, to me, is that the reason that you work is so that you don't die. Mm-hmm. Capitalists like to say, well, everybody's, in capitalism, you're free to work, I guess, wherever you're qualified. Let's make them sound more competent. Okay, you're free to work wherever you're qualified to work. You're free to enter into labor contracts with your employer, and it's a free agreement. You agree to work for this amount of money. They agree to pay you. Everything's good. Well, somebody in that arrangement has a lot more leverage than the other guy, and that's the one who's worried that if he doesn't sign this contract, he's going to starve,
Yeah, exactly. It is not... Anyone who's been to an interview knows how much power dynamic there is at play. You are sucking up to this person in hopes that they will hire you.
Yeah.
Because you need money so you can pay rent.
Yep. It is... I don't know how free people would consider that, but I don't think so. It doesn't seem like you're really doing that just a free choice. Hey, what if I go to work today? You're doing it for a real reason, and that's... I want to live, so I'm going to try to get a job,
Yeah. Which, I think that's okay. We've talked about it before, is that, even in, not utopia, but proto-utopia, where we have some sort of socialism or communism, people are still going to have to do some jobs that are more, some more unpleasant jobs, harder physical jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things that will have to get done.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they can't be compensated fairly and treated humanely and just not shit on by everyone all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're right. Especially when you're at work too, treated fairly and everything.
But also culturally.
There is no sort of freedom, no sort of democracy involved in our economy in terms of when you're at work. That is an autocracy.
No, it's wage slavery. It's literal time slavery too. Like the idea of like, no, you're on the boss's time right now. You can't even fucking check your phone or anything or like take a breather. Like everything has to be go, go, go because apparently someone has bought parts of your life, which is very creepy.
Yeah, they can pretty much control you as much as they want to there. You know, they are the tyrant, you are the oppressed. I mean, when you're at work, like that's it. They can limit what you say. They can limit, if you can gather, they can monitor your private correspondence, whatever.
Oh, completely. If you have a work computer, they own that shit.
Yep.
That they can check on whatever you're doing whenever they want.
Tell you when you can go to the bathroom or not, And at the end of the day, they have a threat where they don't even have to threaten violence against you because they have a bigger threat, which is, you're out on the street, buddy.
Yeah.
So I don't know who would call that free.
No. Yeah, I don't get it either. What about the democracy idea? I don't get that one. I feel like we're not doing great democracy lately. So
yeah, like obviously we just said we don't have economic democracy in the sense that you don't have any control over like your workplace or anything. Mm-hmm. To varying degrees, maybe there are some companies with good policies, but as a whole, we don't.
Well, even if they have good policies, it's someone giving you a policy instead of being like, hey, what do you think the policy should be?
Yeah, for sure. And I would say that even political democracy, Western liberal democracy, which is supposed to be the height of freedoms for people, that's what capitalism tries to wrap itself up in and say, we're the free world. We have free elections, this sort of thing.
Now, explain to me how you can have a free election when you literally can't run for office unless you have buku bucks.
Yeah, for sure.
That part doesn't seem free.
How much of Congress is made up of millionaires? Is that just a statistical coincidence, or is it because, that's money influences politics?
It's because they're very smart, and so they worked hard. They earned all their money.
That's a major thing. And also, like, what do they focus on? What are the problems that they try to address? Who has their ear is the people with the money.
Oh, yeah.
The Supreme Court said money is speech in America. Ugh. In that sense, I guess capitalism does equal democracy because capitalism runs our democracy.
Yeah, yes. You're technically right on that one.
Countries that have more socialistic policies, they're still definitely capitalists. They have a market. But the countries that run things more socialistically and provide more things in terms of social welfare and things, countries in Scandinavia and stuff, or just in Europe in general, if we promoted those sorts of things in the United States, would get called a socialist and everything, right?
Yeah.
But those countries, like, they still got democracies. They still have liberal democracies. They have, like, parliaments and shit. There's no reason why those two things can't coexist. Yeah. And I'm not saying their system's perfect either. I'm sure they have their instances of money kind of corrupting people. But on the other hand, a lot of them have publicly funded elections and stuff. So.
Oh, what a dream.
Right?
Can you imagine?
But not in America. We have money equals speech. So
maybe I'll be rich enough to run for office one day.
I mean, Congress would not be so bad. But the problem is if you're not rich enough to run for office like on your own, then you get to spend more than half of your time as a lawmaker begging people for money. Yeah.
It is, again, not an efficient system. And that is so much I think that's a really common complaint with like the quote unquote average American is, why don't they just sit down and do their jobs? And it's like, because they literally have to go around begging for money. That is their job, is to get reelected.
Yeah, they are doing their job. It's just their job is not what you think it is.
It's not. It's to raise money, not only for them, but for the party too. Like that's their thing.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So overall, I would say there's a lot of problems with the capitalism is freedom. It does nominally, it does legally, in the United States anyway. I guess our system does legally provide you with a lot of freedoms to do this, that, and the other. But in terms of practical matters, you don't actually your choices are very limited because of that system.
Well, I mean, I know we're talking about capitalism today, but obviously we're talking about communism in contrast to that.
Sure. And
socialism. I mean, it's not like you'd have, I guess, what freedoms would you not have there? You couldn't be a boss, I guess. Man.
Right.
That's it, right?
Well, you can't be a boss, for sure.
I mean, you can still help train people and, help them get better at things. Like, you can still be a boss in terms of, like, you're managing, but
you're not free to have five houses,
Yeah.
You're not free to make billions.
Oh, man.
Yeah, you can't do that.
That's fine. No one needs that.
I think in the initial stages, in the lower form, in the lower stage of socialism, you would probably have to have some, like we were talking earlier, labor requirements, basically, to get people to do drudge work, stuff that's not good. I would think you could manage that some way that's decent, that looks out for people in that situation. And then eventually you have, automated things to it. So
one day. There's a lot of like graphics going around Instagram on like how to explain how big a billion is.
Oh yeah, I've been seeing these too. It's crazy.
And it is insane. Like they said, one of them was $1 million is if you walked from like the Bronx to like lower Manhattan. That's 1 million inches. But 1 billion inches is if you like went around the world twice. Like it's insane. One of the things we do often is we lump millionaires and billionaires together. And it's like, no, one of those is way bigger.
Yeah.
And so we can like pay for these things we're talking about. We're not just like fucking making it up and pulling it out of our ass. Literally, we could just take out Jeff Bezos. Parody, satire, whatever. But JK, I'm not going to kill him.
Very much so.
But that's it. We just take out one guy and we got healthcare. Yep.
We could turn him into a millionaire. This is the humane way to do it. Just turn him into a millionaire. Take away all but $1 million from this poor guy, and poor fella is still a millionaire. And you could still do a ton of shit with that.
Then I had this fucking smooth brain try to explain assets to me like I'm a fucking idiot. Like, no, it's not all like he just has $1 billion cash. I'm like, what? That's still money. Like that's stock. He could literally take that and go turn it into money.
Yeah, he could sell it. He could turn it over to the people. We could own that and sell out of it. We could have a permanent trust fund based on that. That could be our health fund forever.
Yeah. There are enough resources, people. It's just assholes. Like, we could pay for so much shit.
To emphasize, then Jeff Bezos would have the terrible fate. The Revolutionary Tribunal would sentence him to being a millionaire.
Yeah.
Come on.
Like, what the heck?
Another example that you were talking about, 1 million seconds is about 11 days. And 1 billion seconds is 31 and a half years.
Oh my God. Ugh.
Yeah. Again, we just want to knock him down to 1 million. That's it.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. But that would be less freedom for Jeff Bezos.
That would, yeah.
Why is his freedom worth more than mine? Oh, I get it. It's because he has money.
Money equals speech. Money is freedom, democracy, and capitalism,
Gross.
There it is.
I guess that they got us on that one, but not in the way they thought they did.
Yeah. Capitalism does equal democracy. Social democrats and democratic socialists, to some extent, might argue that it's possible to use the system of capitalism and still increase the freedoms, increase your democratic process and everything, like make it better, reform it.
Sure, but
I think it could be done. I don't know. A lot of people say it can't be done that way, but
I think it could be, and I definitely would be for it in the interim. But I mean, I was talking to my husband about this the other day. I just am always going to push for more, even if it makes me sound like an asshole. I don't care. Like, I'm just always going to push this to be better. I don't care if it sounds unreasonable. It's just like what I'm going to do, because like I'm trying to get us to fucking utopia, baby. Like, I'm not stopping until we get replicators, which means we all got to get in the car and go.
Yeah, for sure. I guess it's incumbent upon leftists to not be satisfied with whatever is given.
Yeah.
Eventually, you don't want anyone to be giving anything to you. You want to be, you want to be the ones in power deciding what's going to happen. Yeah. The people deciding for ourselves rather than getting some good shit from the government.
So I think the counter of this narrative, of this myth, is that in communist countries and in socialist countries, you are not free. I mean, I guess what is that, freedom of speech kind of thing? Or is it freedom to like start a small business or what?
So in the old days, you could easily point to the Soviet Union, and based on last episode, you could say, well, yeah, in a lot of ways they didn't have some freedoms. There were some freedoms that weren't there. And nowadays you can do that and point to like North Korea, or someone like that. Although there are leftists out there who say that like North Korea is not so bad or something. I don't know. I need to do a lot more research, but as far as I know, they seem pretty bad.
Seems pretty bad.
Hit us in the questions in the inbox.
Yeah, if you've got info. We got some inside scoop on North Korea.
Neither of us know really, but we lean towards probably bad.
Skeptical.
So there are some examples that you can say unfree, right?
But again, if you look at like European socialists, like no one's like getting fucking nailed to the wall because they live in a socialist country over there, as far as I know.
That's your nice counter is going to always be, especially arguing within the United States where we're, barbaric enough to where our left party is basically like a center-right party in Europe at best.
Yeah.
We should probably in America be saying like, oh, look, we just want to do like the Europeans. We should kind of soften it that way, I guess, in our initial things. And then once we're there, we can take the mask off.
Once we have them in our hook.
Hey, yeah, we're actually communists, guys.
Actually communists.
I don't know. I think, I guess that would be the thing is that there are examples of countries governed by socialist parties or communist parties that restrict people's rights.
Yeah.
And so they are able to point and say, look what communism does.
I mean, you could fucking turn it around again, though.
Yeah.
Because,
you can, for sure.
Black Lives Matter protesters are getting beat the fuck up.
Yeah.
They're getting thrown in fucking unmarked vans.
They're gassing mayors now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think it's an effective criticism. I think it takes some thinking to get past the veneer of, oh, yeah, you're free to do whatever you want to. Like, I can get in my car and drive around, if you have a car. But, like, you can go and do things if you want on the face of it, sure. But that all depends on your circumstance, and your circumstance is not fully 100% governed by you. I think that does kind of get us to our next myth.
Which is?
The bootstrap narrative.
Ooh, let me get my boots.
Anybody can succeed under capitalism. We're over here whining that like, oh, what if I'm born poor and like I can't go to college? Come on, quit whining. Get a loan from your parents and go to college,
God.
Get a GoFundMe.
It's just so upsetting.
Anyone can make it in capitalism.
No.
Why not?
No. All right. So there's a little thing called generational wealth. Let's start there.
Generational wealth. Man, we're in the millennial generation. We should have been in the generation wealth.
I know. No, generational wealth is the idea that we've talked about it earlier. One of the traditionally more reliable ways to make long-term money or equity is by buying a house. Because generally, barring crazy market explosions, houses are going to accrue in value.
Yeah.
So what happened was you had colonizers, right? They came over here and they're like, man, I really hate these brown people. So they took their lands from them. And then they built their little houses.
I've heard about this.
Yeah, it sucked. And then they passed that house down to their fucking dumbass son, Bojob. Bojob is his name. It's going to be Joe Bob, but I fucked up.
Bojob, got it.
Bojob.
Weird name, but okay. People named people weird shit back in the day. So
yeah, come on.
They do still now, but...
Then he passes it on, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, the idea is, even if they don't pass on the house physically, they can always sell the house, get that money, buy a new house. Mm-hmm. But, remember that the brown people they kicked out?
Yeah.
They didn't get to have a house.
I thought they paid them in like beads and stuff.
Yeah, that's not enough. That's not enough. And also they brought black people over. They also did not get those houses because they were slaves and they owned them. So they didn't get to own a house for hundreds of years. Yeah. And then when they were finally free, they also didn't get to have a house because banks were like, we're not going to like give you a loan. You're black. We don't trust you. So they were left out of the housing market for, I mean, honestly, a lot of people are still left out of the housing market just because either they're poor or can't get a loan, etc. But in the meantime, you have all those people building up accrued wealth over time. So they're sitting on buku's money. Like if you just are a person who owns a house in California, you are rich.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Depending on the house, of course, but yeah.
Yeah.
Because California, I mean, it's a wide net, but yeah.
Well, yeah. I guess what I'm talking about is like certain areas of it.
If you own a house in San Francisco.
Yeah, you're fucking great. The net worth of a typical white family is nearly 10 times greater than that of a black family.
Now, okay, but what about, here's the criticism you'll get. It's like, yeah, that might be. And, the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, the Bezos, the whoever, they've got their mansion. They're well off. The governor and their family, they got whatever, whoever it is, they've got a ton of money, but I don't. I live in a trailer park. You're going to tell me that I have all this generational wealth, even though that's what the counter you would get from white people. Some white people would be like, but I'm also poor, which is fair. I mean, they are also poor.
I mean, it doesn't mean that you're not poor. It just means like other people are like, they never even had a fucking shot. I mean, maybe you didn't either. I don't know. What if we all had a shot?
Yeah, I would for sure. I think that's a good point to make against that. But you're right. Socioeconomic mobility is kind of what this argument is supposed to be making, right? That everybody can climb the ranks of society and be at the top if they work hard enough. But actually, like recent studies have shown that there's been a declining economic mobility in the United States. Like since 1980, economic mobility is like really decreased. Like it was increasing like 1950, like the post-war years, it was kind of like steadily getting better, and it was kind of like typical American dream of making it big.
Yeah.
Or making it better. Like each generation, you're going to be like,
yeah. You're going to live
off.
longer. You're going to have more resources than the one before.
Yeah. Steep decline since 1980.
I think this phrase is used a lot where cost of living has increased, but wages haven't like seen a significant increase in fucking years.
Yeah. Wage stagnation for sure. And I think it has a lot to do with what you were saying in terms of passing down wealth, in terms of kind of ossifying in place the upper crust, keeping them constantly having all that money, and they can give so much of it away in inheritance and all that.
Yeah, and it's not all property either. It can be businesses too.
Yeah. Pass down the Ski-Doo dealership.
I mean, there's also just gaps in pay. Like people are still paying women less to do the same work. I'm in a particularly bad spot because Hispanic women are paid. This is the hourly wages. We got white is $17 and black women $13 an hour. Hispanics are down at $12 an hour. So these are median hourly earnings.
Man.
Yeah, not great.
That's steep.
Yeah.
It is possible. But it's possible to like win the jackpot at the casino. You ain't going to do it, but it's possible. It's possible to win the lottery. You ain't going to do it, but it's possible. It's possible to be born into extreme poverty, to be born homeless and make it as a Fortune 500 CEO. You're not going to do it, but it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, the deck is stacked against you. So it's just like good fucking luck. Like everything from even just where your zip code is can change your life expectancy by 10 years.
Which is crazy.
Insane. Yeah, literally in the same city. If you're just like in a different zip code, completely will fuck you up.
And I get like maybe it makes an impressive story, like a cool movie or something. If you do all this, or you read the stupid clickbait article is like, this guy was homeless 3 years ago and now he's running his own startup company. Okay, like fine, that's entertaining. I kind of hate it. I don't do that, but
no, yeah.
I imagine that some people find that whatever. Point is, why does the system have to why do we have to settle for a system that makes it so rare that happens and so difficult for that to happen? Why do we want that to be the case? Why wouldn't we want a system that makes more equal outcomes and makes things better for people and lessens these inequalities rather than saying, oh, well, just, try hard and you'll work against all odds. Like, why can't we better those odds?
Yeah. I mean, we love a good myth here. We love a good hero story.
Yeah, the underdog, I guess.
Like, there's nothing wrong with working hard. Again, like we talked about this earlier with competition. Like, there's nothing wrong with working hard. It's just that, like, it could be easier. Like, it could. Like, scientifically, there's enough money for it to be easier. There's enough resources for it to be easier. It's just, we want it to be super easy for some people.
Yeah. Oh, super easy is right. These people, it's easy for them and it's easy for their future progeny. They have such an advantage. It's so hard for everyone else, but at the same time, it's so easy for them.
Oh, for sure. Like, we know lots of, I mean, everyone knows a dumbass who, like, is rich. And you're just like, how did this happen? And then you figure out, oh, your parents just, like, had money and paid for college, so you were able to get a cushy-ass job and do jack shit. Mm-hmm. Like, we all know a rich dumbass.
Yeah. It cuts against the, kind of another myth here. Maybe it falls into our efficiency thing of the meritocracy. Right, that like basically wherever you end up, and this is wrapped up in this myth too, that basically wherever you end up is where you deserve to be.
Yeah,
it's your station in life. It's not something new from capitalism. We had this back in feudalism and the great chain of being. When God sent the king to rule over the people and the vassals to rule over the serfs, and
thanks God.
Where you were supposed to be is your divine station, and that's how it should be. That's what capitalism survived with meritocracy, is that...
Man, I'd be so pissed if God made me a peasant.
What? I mean, your suffering would be righteous.
I hate that too. The noble poor.
But that's kind of what capitalism says, is that, like, if you're poor, you've made some choices or you continue to make choices that put you in that situation. You in some way have earned it.
That's
and
insane.
That, therefore, the people at the top in some way have earned their position, and so on.
I mean, it's just not true. Like, those people, either they stole resources or their ancestors stole resources, or they're screwing over their workers. Like, their hands are not clean.
Yeah.
And even if, like, good job you did all that stealing, I guess you were the best at that in terms of meritocracy. You're the best asshole award.
You're efficient. Efficient at what, though?
I always combat this narrative of, like, have you met a nurse or a teacher or, I don't know, a construction worker? They work so hard. And some of that is, like, backbreaking physical labor.
Yeah.
And
waitresses.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Service industry. They fucking bust their asses out there so you can have the luxury of a nice burger and, beer or whatever.
Yeah. And anybody who looks at those professions and then looks at the profession of some middle management person or some, like, vice president of communications or some bullshit title job where they sit around and they occasionally go to meetings and point at things on whiteboards, like, who's doing more work?
Yeah. Yeah. It's insane. And I don't understand how you expect our society to function when you literally don't value an entire, not even class, multiple classes of people. I guess it's an entire class in terms of, like, yeah, they're all, like, working class.
Proletariat.
The entire proletariat you're just dismissing as not good people because they didn't have the resources to go to school and get a quote unquote good job. Like, those jobs deserve to be treated with dignity too, because you fucking rely on those jobs. Like, you're not going to have burgers and, like, cocktails if you don't. Like, you're just not going to have it. So, like, you should treat those people decently.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And we've talked about this before, too, the idea of, like, service industry should just be a fucking summer job for your teen or whatever. And it's like, no, like, that's labor. Like, I don't care if you didn't have to go to school for it. It's still important and needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You want to move on to the listener question?
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right.
This is kind of a fun one.
I like it. And, we're going to treat this very collegially.
We're going to be nice.
And respectfully. Because we got a listener question. Let me pull up the email from Bob.
What's up, Bob?
And Bob sent us in this question about, there's kind of two parts to his question. He kind of makes it clear up front that he's, not a communist.
We'll get you.
So hopefully
not like in terms of we're going to come stab you. We're going to convert you.
Yeah, hopefully we change your mind gradually, pull you over slowly into the ranks of social democracy, and before you know it, you'll be calling for revolution.
That's how it starts. I got Kyle to say he was a socialist yesterday, and I was so proud.
Oh, nice.
I know. It was in front of his parents, too. I was like, ooh.
Whoa. Nice. Yeah. So he says, all of communism is based upon the premise that the history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles. That's from the Communist Manifesto. He says that Marx kind of goes on to cite examples of what he believes are oppressive relationships. But Bob says that Marx doesn't really go into detail. He says we're supposed to take all these couple of paragraphs and accept it as a rock-solid premise, worthy of serving as a foundation for a world-changing philosophy. Bob says that he rejects that premise. He thinks that many, if not most, relationships throughout history, and certainly in modern times, are collaborative or mutually beneficial. This especially holds true in societies that value freedom. So what his question is here, what material would you recommend that he reads up on to get more background and support for this premise?
Can I go first?
You can go first.
We mentioned this book earlier, and we are reading it for a future episode, but Edward Galeano's Open Veins of Latin America goes into extensive detail on how this is not a mutually beneficial relationship.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I described it earlier as the completely brutal exploitation of the Americas in the early stages of capitalism. I think he does a really good job of laying that out over and over again.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes it gets repetitive and you kind of cross the stories and you're like, did I already read about this one?
Yeah, it's just which resource are we talking about? Yeah, because I'm taking notes as I'm reading, and every time I'm just like, okay, wait, this is going to happen again. All right, cool. I mean, not cool at all, but okay, at least I know what's going to happen.
Yeah. It's completely exploitative. And of course, in that system, you do have out and out slavery, which, more modern capitalists can say, well, never slavery, but okay. He does kind of explain how it still goes on in, like, I guess he's writing in like the 60s and 70s. It still goes on in terms of economic exploitation.
Yeah. Not
technically slavery, but like slave-like conditions. Like modern indentured servitude style, like indebted workers and things like that, to where they could kind of get around paying them for the most part, or paying them extremely little.
Yeah, so an example of this is the latifundio system, which they're basically landlords, and they own a big piece of land. And so what they'll do is your workers on that land, you'll let them basically lease out a plot of land for their own. Now, they have to work in your field like 90% of the time, but when they go home during their off hours, which I imagine are not many, they get to tend to their little plot of land.
You don't think they get a lot of off hours?
Probably not.
Yeah, that's called sharecropping, guys. I mean, we had that in the United States too.
It was bad.
Yeah. Another resource, I would think. So definitely Open Veins of Latin America. That's a really good one.
Yeah, and listeners, if you want to get started on reading that so you can be part of our book club, you can be part of our book club if you didn't read it, but if you want to be, I don't know, big old nerd.
Yeah, be a nerd. It's fun.
Yeah.
Another good resource for looking into this, and this is more U.S. centric, is A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn.
I started reading this a long time ago. I never finished it.
I finished it, but it's been so long that I've, kind of absorbed parts, but I've forgotten a lot of the details. Yeah. It's good to get a whole picture, obviously reading the whole thing, but in particular, if you're just, you just want to go straight to what you're looking for, relating to like capitalists exploiting the workers, chapter 11 called Robber Barons and Rebels, and chapter 13 called The Socialist Challenge. Both of those are really good in terms of looking at working conditions of people, looking at like how these relationships are not equal, how they're not collaborative, really, they're more exploitative, and how they're not mutually beneficial for each other. To access The People's History of the United States, if you're interested and you don't want to spend any money, you could obviously try the library, good resource there. But if you want to just do it online, there's a site called historyasaweapon.com, and just look for Zinn, A People's History on there, and they have the whole thing online. So do that,
I think, again, this kind of reminds me of a lot of the myths we've been talking about before. The idea of being mutually beneficial here. I think on like a surface level, you can say, yeah, this employer is providing jobs and this employee needs a job. But if you take a closer look at it, we talked about, who actually has the power here. You're being given a job, but it's not out of the goodness of their heart. They're not like, oh, you look bored. You need to come work here. It'll be fun. They're doing it so that you can produce something for them, and so they can make money off of that thing you're producing for them. It's not, and at the end of the day, they're getting that profit. They're not splitting it with you equally. They're not doing that. And then they're not doing the work. So what are they doing besides exploiting you?
I don't know how Bob would specifically make this argument, but someone sympathetic would say, capitalists, okay, they take the risk of owning all this capital that you require humans to do things to make things, right? Mm-hmm. Whether that's like a manufacturing thing where it's obvious, or like a less obvious example, like a design studio or something, and you need people to go in there and come up with the ideas and stuff. But I think you're right that either way, that is exploitative in terms of the bosses or the capitalists getting the profit there. Mm-hmm. And I do want to make clear that I don't think that this means that every capitalist is personally like mustachio twirling evil person.
Yeah, no. I mean, we're all doing what we can right now.
Yeah, like they are a part of a system that does not require bad people for it to still do bad things.
Yeah.
And I think also we mentioned this before, but like at the end of the day, like you said, you're not going in there for fun. You're going in there so that you don't starve. You're going in there so that you can afford to put a roof over your head. I mean, even people who have like decent jobs, who would consider themselves well off, at the end of the day, you might still get some benefits from the relationship, but it's still exploitation because it's still like forced labor. You're still being forced to do it, because if you don't, you die or live in squalor.
Yeah.
And it's still weighted, like you said, the boss is still getting the profit. It's still weighted for them. Like you're not going to get, if you get a contract where you're getting the full benefits of your labor, you're not going to work there for long, because that company is going to go out of business.
Yeah, because we prize companies that do not do that.
Yeah.
Whoever has the biggest bottom line.
So I would say, even if it's humane exploitation, at the end of the day, it's still exploitation.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the argument, you're talking about who has the capital. So if you didn't have that, I guess everyone would come together and say, okay, yeah, this town needs, whatever. It needs a factory, it needs a hospital, it needs whatever. And they would all pitch in to make that happen.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, any sort of work that you do that is of any large scale is going to be social work, meaning that more than one person has to collaborate to get it done.
Yeah.
The whole thing with capitalism is that while you do have all this social work going on, it's privately owned, like the means of production. Mm-hmm. That's in one person's hand. What you would want to do in a socialist society is socially own that. And so socially, all that profit is everybody's, and everybody gets to profit from the fruit of that production's labor. But yeah, everybody would have to get together and say, we need to do this thing, or the nation has to, decide, hey, we need all these things done. Let's put out the money to do that.
Yeah. Okay. To me, that seems more collaborative.
Yeah. Well, yes, you're right. I think it's more people working together, and it's definitely on a more equal footing,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't, maybe it's semantic a little bit, but collaboration does sound equal to me, rather than like I'm working with my boss. I'm doing what my boss tells me to do.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It doesn't sound as collaborative.
Yeah.
What else? I think another thing here that's interesting when he says that there are some mutual benefits. I don't think he's completely wrong there. Like, I don't want to say that workers get nothing. Like we said, you do get you do get some money.
Yeah.
Or if you were a serf, like when the enemy tribes come in to invade, you get to go and
go hide in the
protected. Castle. Yeah, like, all right, you got something. Even, particularly heartless people would say, slaves, like they got fed and clothed, like whatever. Sure, literally they did get a thing.
You see that fucking thing where he's like, the nation was built on it. We had to have it. Necessary evil.
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
Future Führer Tom Cotton.
Jesus, man.
Him aside. All right. So, yes, exploited groups that communists say are exploited. You're right to say that those groups do get something in return for what they've done.
Yes.
Right. In return for their labor. They do get something. But if you're looking at society today, or ancient societies or whatever. Would you pick somebody who is getting oppressed by their boss like
Yeah,
that?
you would not.
Would you pick to be a slave?
God, no.
Would you pick to be a serf? You'd pick to be a noble.
Yeah.
You'd pick to be a rich person. You'd pick to have an easy life, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, as communists, as socialists, as leftists, our kind of argument here is we do want a more egalitarian society. Like, it's not enough for social relations to provide a little bit of benefit to people for what, for the suffering they have to go through. Even if they kind of like their job or whatever, it's not enough for people to get like sort of ripped off. We like you said, we want everything. We do want to constantly be improving and making things better and demanding more. Like, I think we don't want there to be a capitalist class. We don't want someone to be there to be nice to us, to give us what we deserve. Like, we want us to be in charge of things and be able to collaborate with ourselves instead of working with a class superior.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I always think about the time machine question. You can always tell who's the white man in the room by if they want to go back in time.
Yeah, anybody. Yeah, for sure. I guess so the counter to that would be if you went back in time, but it was like an observation window, like a UFO style. I could do that.
Yeah, I could just see what happened, crack some
You're
conspiracy
safe, you've got
theories.
lasers if anybody fucks with you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine with me. But no, not to live in. That'd be a fucking nightmare. Yeah, I think, again, just questioning the idea of the definitions here. Like, yeah, you can technically, I guess you're technically collaborating with your boss in the sense that, like, yeah, they need an employer, you need an employee, or you're benefiting each other from labor versus pay. But it's just, is it enough? And, why are some people's labor worth more than other people? Why is the fact that this guy happened to have $10,000 worth more than the fact that, like, hey, I actually know how to I know how to make the thing that he thought of. So, like, that's pretty cool. Like, yeah. Well, it's just, and I don't know. I don't want to get too hung up on, like, fairness, because I think that can lead to some traps. But also, like, even if it's not fair, like, I think people make this argument a lot. It's like, well, then everyone's just going to be exploiting the system, whatever. And I'm like, I'm okay with a few people exploiting the system. Like, I just don't care. Like, I will take that.
Here's an interesting counter to that. It's not super productive, but I like it in terms of, like, cutting the other side down is, you ain't got anybody exploiting the system now.
Yeah.
What are the people at the top doing of not exploiting the system? They got the whole thing bought off. All the
tax
senators
loopholes,
and the congressmen and
all the crazy.
You're telling me they're not exploiting the system?
The bank accounts in, like, the Canary Islands or whatever.
Yeah. People will exploit the system. Whoa, there's something new.
Yeah. Like, of course. It's just that one is for some reason okay because they paid enough lawyers to make it okay.
Right.
Ugh. So yeah, I'm willing to take that chance that, like, yeah, I'm just willing to pay people more and, like, provide for them, even if it means that, I don't know, that is less fair. I don't give a shit. I just think people have rights.
People have rights.
I think people have rights.
That gets us to our next.
Oh, hey, look at that segue. I didn't even mean to do that shit.
Bob adds a second question here. I think that in order for something to be a legit human right, it must not infringe upon the rights and freedoms of others. For example, suppose healthcare is a human right and therefore equally accessible by everyone under any condition. While this sounds great, we agree, Bob, it does sound great.
I love
it. While this sounds great, the fact is that quality healthcare doesn't occur naturally. Someone has to create medicine, diagnose ailments, etc. What if no qualified person's available to perform such services? Do we just find the most qualified person and get subpar healthcare service? Do we conscript someone that's qualified and force them, perhaps against their will, to provide service for others? How does communism get around this challenge? He says, perhaps you reject my premise that something can only be a human right if it does not infringe upon the rights and freedoms of others. If so, how do you determine which rights and freedoms are expendable or which people can be coerced into service?
So yeah, I think this is interesting because we talked about this a little bit in our arts episode, the idea of if I were in charge, we would have a green corps that's like, hey, your job is to fix the fucking planet.
Yeah.
So, and maybe this makes me a bad person. I'm into Okay, I'm not going to use the word conscripting, but into heavily encouraging those positions to be filled.
Yeah, you got to do something. Because, I mean, ultimately, this question boils down to how do we make sure that necessary work gets done to provide people with their human rights? Because like we said, we agree with Bob that healthcare being a human right sounds great, and we support
Love it.
We think it's a human right. The same can be said for socialists and communists, and a lot of leftists for housing.
Yeah.
That we think that should be a human right.
Hell yeah.
For food, education. These should be things that people are guaranteed.
Yeah.
Utilities, what we consider the basics of human existence. So we do have to figure out, okay, how are we actually going to get those provided?
Yeah.
I don't think that we definitely don't currently have a situation where like no qualified person is available to I mean, there's plenty of doctors, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess you could mean like shortages, like available like right there where you are.
I guess my thought was, what if it's you're in communism, you're in socialism. We'll say you're in socialism, and you are providing a social safety net, so everyone has income, like provided for them, and like everyone's needs are being met. But how would those needs be met? Because then, like, you can decide to do whatever you want. Like, what if everyone's like, I'm going to be a rock star?
Right. Yeah. So you do have to have, like he says, these things don't occur naturally. Like houses don't just plop down. You do have to have people build them. You do have to have doctors healing people. So like, yeah. What do you do to make sure that happens? I think it's really simple for very difficult tasks that people don't want to do, but that don't require a lot of credential training. Because like you said, you essentially just kind of conscript that. You have like the toilet brigade. You know, nobody wants to really be the janitor, but 1 week out of the year, you're on the janitor crew.
Oh. Okay, so it's stuff that doesn't require a lot of training. It's just like everyone takes turns.
Yeah, so for that, I think that's simply solved. It's just rotations. You're on the toilet brigade, you're on the sweeping the floors brigade, you're on the whatever. You know, you do those things. It's just something you have to do. That can be state run, you know, national level, whatever. That could be anarcho-communist run pretty easily too.
Oh, for sure. It's just like, it's your turn to sweep out the commune. Go. It's a chore wheel.
And then obviously if you have people, especially at the local level, you have people that are like, I like that actually.
I'm very into
do that,
sweeping.
dude. It's cool. Like, it's fine. It's like, yeah, I get to listen to all the podcasts, you know, whatever. Okay,
Cool.
Dude, do it, you know, fine. But generally, I think you would have to do rotations on that. But you can't do rotations with something that requires a lot of training ahead of time, you know, requires a lot of credentials, requires, you know, like years of medical school or whatever. And also if these tasks are very stressful, like being a doctor would be, or, you know, a veterinarian or a teacher.
I would add like
whatever.
construction-y things like, construction for like backbreaking labor, but also things like an electrician. You need a lot of training, and plumbing and HVAC and all that kind of stuff.
That's true. There's tons of things that would kind of fall under this. Anything that you're probably admittedly going to have like a chaotic little period where you got to figure out how to allocate everybody to where they need to be.
And I think that's where sliding into socialism could be helpful, because then you can be like, okay, well, you're going to get like buku's stipend for doing this. So like we can still incentivize people with money as they transition into this.
Yeah, I think so. Short term, you're going to want to incentivize it for sure a lot, as much as you can. You need to make going into these careers, and as you find out about what they are, you know, what do we have to do to what careers do we have to coax people into, you know? And you can do that by making it a central part of your culture, by propagandizing it. I mean, encourage people from when they're kids to want to do these things because it's, you know, for the good of their people.
In some countries, teachers are as prestigious as surgeons. Like, it is hard to become a teacher. You have to take lots of tests for it, and like, you're really well paid. Like, it's a big deal to be a teacher.
Conversely, in Texas, at least, I've seen a highway billboard sign that said, "Do you want to teach? When can you start?"
Just literally
like, you know, we're just pulling people like right out. I get it, because you want to, you know, address a teacher shortage, but it does definitely kind of ding the prestige of it, which I think you would want to encourage here. You would want to say, do these things, they're great. You would want to incentivize as much as you can, whether that's money wise, whether that's, a cooler house in the housing system thing, whatever. Like, figure it out.
I like the idea of like culturally making it important to like, tell more stories about these types of people and, encourage it, like kids, since I hung out with a kid today, they play a lot at careers and, you can kind of nudge them towards things that like are important instead of just being like, no, you've got to be a doctor, you got to be a lawyer, because we're taking away that financial incentive in many ways. And so now it's going to be like, okay, what is helpful for society? Like, we do need these things. Don't you want to help out your community that way? Unfortunately, in the States, at least, we have a very nasty culture surrounding, like, quote unquote, blue collar workers. Like, it's just, they're looked down on. Same thing with service industry.
Unskilled.
Yeah. And it's like, man, first off, a lot of those are skilled. If you threw me in a waitress job, oh my God, I'd quit so fast.
All of them are skilled. It's just a matter of how much. I think we've mentioned that before. It's
for sure, yeah.
It's all skilled labor.
And even if it's not like particularly skilled, like even if you're on, like we said, the toilet brigade or sweeping or whatever, like someone still has to do it, and it's still important. It has to get done.
Yes, yeah, it's got value. You're right. It has to be done. That's the value of it. I think another thing I would add to this is directing society's resources to increase the efficiency of that particular field. So all of these, what we're saying is that we're worried that we might not have enough people to do what we need to do, right? Mm-hmm. What we have to do ultimately is make it to where people in these fields especially, and then later on other fields, don't have to do as much labor. Like, you don't need as many people to do the same amount of work.
Okay.
Right? That way you gradually wouldn't have to incentivize all this stuff, because you don't need that many doctors. You don't need that many whatever. You can automate more of the work.
Ooh.
So the same doctor can cover so much more. There's less human labor needed.
I would also say we're going to have a whole bunch of people whose jobs are not around anymore. So they're going to need something to do. We're going to, like, the insurance industry, bye. Like,
yep.
So you're going to get retrained and find something else you hopefully are into.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. Eventually, right, you get to replicator stage and
you're good.
And you're good. You've advanced things enough to where people can kind of do what they want. You might need 10% of the doctors that you have now. 10% of all the profession, people do work way more rarely. One of Marx's things was that one of his theories was the theory of alienation. Mm-hmm. And he said that the way capitalism is structured is that you are separated or alienated from your work. You do the work, but you do the work for the wrong reasons, basically. You're doing the work for somebody else to take from you and profit from it. And so you don't feel like the work is yours. You only contribute like a little bit to it, especially if you're like assembly line style or whatever.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the work does something that is not really as important to you usually. You did it to be paid rather than as a useful thing that you wanted to get done.
Yeah, as a greater good.
Yeah. And his argument is that, one of his arguments is that with the transition to socialism and then communism, you wouldn't have that alienation anymore, because you would be doing things for your own good, for the people's good, and so your labor would be more meaningful. Mm-hmm. Work, he said, would become, it's strange to hear this in our society, but work would become like a joy.
Yeah.
Like, people would like to work, and he says people naturally would like to work if work wasn't so shitty, if they didn't have to do all these things for other people.
Yeah. And you have to think about this too. Even if you're getting these, kind of shittier jobs, more stressful or more physically demanding, you're still going to have a union who's going to make sure that you, one, have all your basic needs cared for, but also like your work week's going to be way shorter, and like you're going to have more free time. Like, it's just going to be a lot less stressful than it is now. You're not going to have to worry about putting food on the table.
True. Yeah, that's very true.
I guess I'm trying to figure out what freedoms you're going to infringe on. I mean, yeah, that'd be the worst case scenario, is getting conscripted into stuff.
Yeah. I think that would obviously be kept to a minimum. That would be the heaviest hand you could use, would be doing that. That wouldn't be ideal, and it would be something we would try to get rid of as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I think...
if it's even necessary.
Yeah, hopefully it's not necessary, and I would very much hope it's not. But I think as it becomes more and more not necessary, there's a better way to phrase that, but as it becomes easier, as we're getting better at fixing things and providing for ourselves, then yeah, the goal is shifting to not being concerned about, how well can I provide for myself because you're being provided for, to how well can I provide for the community because we're all working on this together.
Yeah, I guess that ties back into kind of our human nature thing. If we change the conditions, people have different goals. You don't need to teach your kid to make sure you look out for number one or something. Make sure you do well in school so that you can go survive and have a decent life for yourself instead of struggling every day. You don't have to do that because you're going to be fine. Make sure that you attain the education that you desire. Make sure that you pursue the career that fulfills you, or that helps you in your overall goal, which is not just career, but your life to be fulfilled.
Like what kind of job can you do that will benefit others? And that's awesome.
For sure. Yeah. And so I guess to tie back to the question, we do think that these are all human rights, and we do accept that means that some work is going to have to get done. We think that there are non-coercive ways in most situations to try to get that to get that done.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then we would have to cross that bridge when we get there. I think there's a lot of problems that capitalism doesn't solve. We talked about that in the beginning. We have an idea. I think that socialists have put thought into how to try to make this happen. We don't know if it'll work yet, but we hope. That's something that we would hopefully try.
Yeah.
May very well think it's inadequate, but that's what we would go for first.
Yeah. And like you said, we talked about why you actually have a lot fewer rights under capitalism than you think you do. So, sorry.
Yeah, your freedom is impinged upon a lot by capitalism.
A lot of circumstances.
That's not, but I guess conversely, that's not to say that we want to infringe upon anybody's rights either. I don't know. That's maybe naive. I don't think, however, that it would come to that, really.
I hope not. Thank you for sending that question. And also thank you for listening to us, because Bob made clear that he is not communist and he is a capitalist. And I really appreciate you taking the time to learn about other viewpoints. I wish more people did that.
Yeah, we love you, even though you're a capitalist or a defender of capital. You're great, man. I appreciate you listening to us.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your compliment on the sound quality.
Oh yeah, we went crazy for that.
The primary editor here, I definitely appreciate that.
I felt super bad because you sent this and our recent 2 episodes were accidentally recorded using my fucking laptop mic, so it sounds like shit, and I felt so bad.
Yeah, we immediately disappointed you on that front,
yeah,
but
sorry.
We did our best with what we were given on that one. We were returning to form, however. All right, you want to call it there?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get a nap in.
Where can people find us?
We are on the internet, and we are at Twitter at teachcommunism, Instagram at teachmecommunism, and if you want to send us an email, that is teachmecommunism@gmail.com. You can send us a question. You can just send us nice things, whatever. But if you send us a question, it could be on the show. I think so far we've addressed all of them, so we have a pretty good hit rate.
Yeah, and you can also suggest to us ideas for episodes and stuff in the future. We got one of those as well.
Oh, so. Yeah. And also, I don't know, if you're an expert at something, you want to be on here, fucking give us a call. Send us an email. We don't know everything.
Yeah.
Be sure to review and rate us on Apple Podcasts. And our current review is still a dick. So, yeah, please cover that up at some point.
Hey, it's okay. We're in the dick commune.
Oh, yeah,
remember?
the dick commune. And yeah, you can find us on Spotify and all those podcatchers, and send them to your friends and be like, hey, check out these people. They're cool. I love them.
Yeah.
They're the best.
All right, so what do you want to learn about next time?
Next time, I want to learn about some women in communism.
Good. Let's do that. We'll be deciding on which woman to discuss, maybe a couple of them.
Yes. So if you have any that you'd like to nominate, this is going to be an ongoing series. We haven't quite decided if we're going to do like one big bio or, have a couple in that episode. But we'll definitely be doing more of them because, there's a lot of women in communism, y'all.
But yeah, we'll figure out who that's going to be. If you have any suggestions for them, send them in because, like Christine said, we're going to be making this an ongoing thing.
Okay. Cool. I'm excited.
You'll kind of have some homework on that too.
Dang it.
To help me with the research there.
Yeah.
We'll kind of do a group presentation here.
Man, I'll do the PowerPoint and just make it look good. That's what I always do.
Well, this is a podcast, so.
Damn it. I can't even cop out with visuals like I always do. I'm always the note taker or the poster maker.
You don't have to do the thinking, basically.
Yeah. I'm just dexterity.
There's some thought that goes into making it.
Yeah, there
nice.
is.
That's true. All right. Well, as always, you've been a great student in our mutual discussions here about the myths of capitalism.
Thanks. You were a good teacher.
All right. Listeners, you can catch us next week on another episode of Teach Me Communism, where the class struggle is always in session.
Bye.
Bye.
I stole my bye from Tanya. Sorry, Tanya, I love you. Notice me, senpai. Okay, stop.